Hey everybody, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 26th of February, 2023, and on today's show, a look back at yesterday's Big 12 action. What does it mean for the bubble teams in this conference? How many Big 12 teams will make the NCAA tournament? We're going to start, though, with a conversation about, is there a national champion in the Big 12 in 2023? A team that is worthy of winning the entire thing when it comes to college basketball, because that's being kicked around right now in a lot of places, and I'm not sure if everybody's got a team in mind, but we'll talk about, hey, are these Big 12 teams cut out for it? Is anybody really cut out for it? And then we'll kind of go from there. A couple of things, though. There will be no intro this week, and I'm not even sure I'm going to do any interviews, so I am in Costa Rica on vacation. Last month, I've been doing shows in Richmond. I've been doing shows in Little Rock. I did a show in Nashville. I'm now doing a show in Costa Rica. My February was just crazy. I had a vacation planned. I moved. I was in different places. I was on the road. So I promise that new setup that you all have seen in the past videos, if you guys are watching for the first time, check out the past videos. They're great. That's normally where I will be moving forward. But for this week, Wi-Fi is not strong enough to support me doing a video on StreamYard the entire time. So I'm recording an iMovie or a QuickTime, and I'm uploading it to YouTube. So low production level on QuickTime today, or this week at least. But it'll be me. Still have a show, still have videos, still have audio. It's going to be everywhere that you guys want to check out your podcast. So we will have all of that. All right, let's get to the action on today's show. So kind of going over yesterday, because another crazy day in college hoops. Was watching back, kind of looking at everything, what we saw, some upsets, some teams playing really well. UNC on the bubble beats UVA. Arkansas really gave a great effort against Alabama. Kansas narrowly escapes West Virginia. Purdue goes down against Indiana. And everybody right now, I think a lot of college basketball folks, people in the media, fans, we're all getting close to bracket time, and we're all trying to figure out, okay, who's it going to be this year? Who the teams we like, at least identifiably, like who can we pick out that we think is going to be really good? And it kind of made me think, and Robbie made me think about this too, Robbie Tirano, our friend at SiriusXM. We did a segment last week about, can any of these Big 12 teams win a national championship? And I think, when we watch Big 12 basketball every single week, we begin to think, every single time, like these teams, they just go through so much, like in a given season, right? There are so many ups and downs in a Big 12 basketball season. The Kansas Jayhawks are 22-5, right? 5 losses actually is a pretty decent amount, but they are in pole position, and nobody doubts how good of a team that they are. Think about Houston. Houston's a 25-2, right? 2 losses, narrow losses by combined 7 points. The second place team right now, we got Baylor in Texas right now, 21-6, and Baylor's 20-7. They just got their 20th win yesterday, but we were talking about them as a national championship caliber team recently. And so there's 2 things to balance. What are the legitimate holes in the teams that we have seen, but also, too, recognizing that this is the best league in America, and not even just in this league, but across college basketball, we're identifying so many teams this year that have holes, that have issues, that are pretty easily seen. And just going through the top ones, I actually think Houston right now at number 1 is probably the team with the least amount of holes. But this group has never gotten the job done. They're a great rebounding team. They've got some good guards, but we've seen it against Temple, and we saw it against Alabama. They were whipping Alabama's tail, and they let them on their home floor, on Houston's home floor, come back and win that basketball game. That was not an impressive effort in the last part of that game. Early in the season, fine. Then you go back to that Temple game. Like, Temple? Are we going to let Temple come in and get you? And look, you play 30 games in a season. Somebody's going to catch you eventually. But I think they're the team with the least amount of holes. But maybe is there a bit of Gonzaga factor when it comes to how we look at the American Athletic Conference? That's a 2-bid league. It's going to be Memphis. It's going to be Houston. And where has the stiff competition come from? Where are teams like West Virginia that will press you at times? Where are teams like Iowa State that want to slow you down and grind you down defensively? They've got different versions of it, right? You're going to play guys like Taylor Hendricks, who is a potential lottery pick, but they don't surround their potential lottery picks like Baylor does with Adam Flagler and L.J. Cryer and Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatchoua. That doesn't exist, right? That's not how the AAC is currently comprised. And that's what you have to think about. Like, they've got some teams with some really good individual players, some interesting players, but they don't have the teams that play the styles that, like, are the best at the style that they play, right? A Virginia, actually Virginia's not even Virginia this year, but a Virginia that slows you down, a Kansas that can run you wild, a Baylor that wants to spread you out and jack the threes, a TCU that can hit tough twos and knows how to attack the rim and wants everybody on the floor to take open shots and's got a tough shot maker. Like they just don't have a team can't shoot worth of crap but can rebound the hell out of the basketball in Oklahoma State. These other conferences, the Big Ten does present a little bit of that, actually, but you really can't say a lot. And maybe the SEC. The SEC can present versions of that, but the conferences like Houston, they don't have that. And so if Houston inevitably, it feels like it's probably inevitable if they keep doing well, eventually runs into a Big 12 basketball team somewhere in the NCAA tournament or an SEC team, even for that matter, if you want to go that direction. Like, how do they handle that? I think it's an interesting question, right? We saw Gonzaga beat Gonzaga. We saw Arkansas beat Gonzaga last season. Felt a little bit like, wow, Jalen Williams is here all of a sudden. We got guys on the outside taking and making tough shots, and we're just not used to seeing that kind of thing. Is that going to hurt Houston? I think they're better prepared for the NCAA tournament. But I think it's a valid question. But Houston, I think, has the least amount of questions of everybody. You go to, Purdue has been the best team all season, like wire to wire. And obviously, Zach Edey's been, they have the best player wire to wire all season in Zach Edey. But they've got a lot of options about how good are their guards, like how's the distribution with their guard play. Alabama, man, they've got a ton of freshmen though. I know they got Sears, and I know they have Javon Quinterly. They got a ton of freshmen though. Clowney, obviously Brandon Miller, and they've got this situation that they have let spiral a bit out of control, right? Miller was fantastic in South Carolina, but there are legitimate questions about should he be playing right now. Nate Oates under the microscope, especially after the comments he made. And to put all this on top of it, we have the pat down happening in line. And look, it could have galvanized these guys, sure, but this is a group that's their best players are young. Their most talented players are young. And it's a whole lot mentally to deal with. We saw it against South Carolina. The only guy who felt like he was really, felt like he was super prepared was Brandon Miller, ironically enough. And, I thought yesterday against Arkansas punched them in the mouth. But what happens when you get a team, Arkansas is a good team. They've got some veterans, but their best player, most talented player, Nick Smith's a freshman. Their point guard, Anthony Black, who I think you could argue is their most important player, is a freshman. Jordan Walsh, really good player, is a freshman. And they've got Devo Davis, Ricky Council, all these guys. But, that they're going to run into some guys down the line that are experienced and old. A Baylor, a team, obviously, like a Kansas. Down the line they'll run into, and how do they handle those teams? When older teams turn the heat up and the coaching is level 2 or a little bit better than what they have normally. I think it's a very, very valid question. And I think it's Kansas, and we've seen them have plenty of struggles and questions be asked. So, UCLA too, they're on a 7-game winning streak, but how good is that pack? How good is that Pac-12? I saw it on their 7-game winning streak, guys. They have not played a team that is going to be in the NCAA tournament. Not a single one that's going to be in the NCAA tournament have they beaten in the 7-game winning streak. How good is that? How good is it when the only chances to measure you up against NCAA tournament level competition are Arizona, who has definitely had their struggles. We saw them lose to ASU yesterday. I know it was at the buzzer, but Arizona had their struggles, and then obviously USC. And it's a decent basketball team, USC. They got one great player in Boogie Ellis, who I think is a guy who can go for 30 any night, but there's really not a whole lot testing you on a night-to-night basis. It makes it difficult too. Now, it's a team that's got a lot of experience, but these questions are being asked top to bottom. And so I think we look at teams like Baylor, they could win it. Texas, maybe, I'm not so sure. Got some Marcus Carr issues I want to address later on. TCU could make a run if they can get Eddie Lampkin back full strength. Kansas, there's no doubt about it. The Jayhawks could make that run. Baylor, we know, could make that run with a team that looks exactly like the one they currently have. So while you're like, man, what am I supposed to do mentally with that half that I just saw these guys play, these guys being Baylor, play against KU? How do I square that? What do I do with that half of basketball? Where do I compartmentalize that? And how do I, put that into context of what it means when they play somebody else? Or even that game at Kansas State that lost by 10. How do I think about Baylor, the team that I saw in that first half against KU that made the run all the way back after losing their first 3 games of the season to get to this point right now? Where do I put them mentally up against a team like the Alabamas of the world, right? Like the Purdues of the world, the Northwestern. I'm just picking them because they're high up in the league. Indiana, right? Where do I put that? So I think it's a massive question, obviously, but I think we can still feel comfortable that while teams are getting the crap kicked out of them, like I'm telling you guys, I think TC can make the Final Four. They're 500 in conference. Now it's because they've had injuries. They're a 500 team in conference, and I'm like, yeah, that team, the best version, can make the Final Four. Baylor's 10-6 in conference. 4 games over. That's like nothing. It's good. It's not pretty though. It's not amazing. And I'm like, yeah, that team could do it too. That's just how good this league is. And so while there might be questions, and look, while a Big 12 team might not make the championship this season, we've put 3 in the last 3 tournaments that they've played. They've been 3 separate teams. 2 have won it all, and they've all had questions about them at some point in time about how good that team was. So I think it's something that we have to note as we go forward. But I'm still confident there could be an NCAA champion in this Big 12 conference. All right, quick word from our sponsors, the folks at Built Bar. Today's Locked On Big 12 podcast is brought to you all by Built Bar. Go to Built.com today. That's Built.com. Or you guys can go to Walmart or Sam's Club now. They both of those locations now have Built Bars. If you guys go to the Walmarts, they've got the 4-packs. If you guys want to buy in bulk, which I always like to do, go to Sam's Club. 13 packs available for you there at Sam's Club when you guys go there to buy. And they've got brownie flavors, they've got chocolate covered, everything, and they're because 100% covered in chocolate. Not a ton of sugar. They're good. They're good for you. They're good before a workout. They are good after a workout. They're good for dessert. Always good. Always filling. Built Bar. You guys make sure you guys check them out. All right, so let's go through these games. Let's talk about the bubble situation. Joe Lenardi yesterday had his bracket, or yesterday, but going into the Saturday games, weekend slate, I should say, he had his latest version of bracketology. In this version, when it comes to Big 12 teams, in his last 4 buys, so the 4 teams that are safe on the 16-team bubble, he has got Pittsburgh, Nevada, Memphis, and West Virginia. So West Virginia there, last team in that group, basically right there next to the last 4 in. Then we go last 4 in. Oklahoma State is with USC, Wisconsin, and Mississippi State. So obviously they're there, and not to mention this, USC wins this weekend, Mississippi State wins this weekend, Penn State got a win yesterday. I think they play Rutgers tonight, which is a pretty big game. But they beat Ohio State on Thursday night. They've got a 3 straight game winning streak happening now. Utah State is right there as well. They got a win last night at Wyoming. They've won 3 straight games right now. Then North Carolina picks up a win last night against University of Virginia. So they've got back-to-back wins. They beat a top 10 team in last night's game. And so you're seeing all these teams are starting to make a move in the right direction. And right now, Charleston's putting up wins, but they're not beating good teams. So you're kind of like, what does that mean? And their conference tournament is this week. So we're going to get a better answer on Charleston. I guess the best thing for them is if they need to win their conference tournament. If Charleston wins their conference tournament, that's good because it's another team that does not get thrown in the bid stealing category potentially. Because then you go to the next 4 out and you've got Texas Tech sitting there. He's got Texas Tech sitting there with Clemson, Michigan, New Mexico. Clemson and Michigan are the schools that are going to have chances to rack up quality wins. I think that's definitely possible along the way. So, but Texas Tech will as well. And let's go to they lost yesterday, and let's go to the bubble results. Let's actually start with that game. So Texas Tech, kind of in a wild back and forth game. It felt like Texas Tech is riding the lightning right now. They really have been. 1, 2, 3, 4 straight wins. K-State, number 12 team in the country. Texas, number 16 in the country. At West Virginia, at OU. And I still think beating OU to me is a good win just because we just saw them win at Hilton. We've seen them play really well at Allen Fieldhouse. We saw them play really well at Texas. We saw them massacre Alabama. They've got feathers in their cap. They have actually performances that are legitimately good. Thought it was a good win. Tech was off to it was kind of a shaky start. It was kind of back and forth. Tech goes in this massive run there at the end of the game, but Mike Miles gets the job done. Late layups. A late layup goes to the rim and obviously gets some free throws that allow them to win this game and end up winning 83-82. I thought it was a pivotal game for both because no Eddie Lampkin right now when we talk about what TCU is dealing with. I'm a big believer now that with Eddie Lampkin, they should maybe just sit him the rest of the way. They're 19-10. They're 8-8 in conference. I know they're playing for seeding, but you've got 2 weeks, 14 days until we hit Selection Sunday. When we hit Selection Sunday, you're 4 days away from your next game, NCAA tournament game. You want your full complement of players ready to go. And they are not there right now at the full complement at 100%. Mike Miles still coming back. Looks like old Mike Miles, but still he's getting those sea legs back. And you want your full complement because that team has got so many guys that are important role players. The Coles, the Wells, the Peavies, the Baws, the Millers, the Xavier Corks of the world who had a great game yesterday. The Coles, all these guys are really important. Jacoby Coles yesterday steps up big time for them. Big time. 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Like this team has got a lot of guys that I think are ready to play in the tournament. They're not good on their own, but when you add the trigger man, Mike Miles, back to the mix, they're in good shape. And yesterday I thought they did a good job limiting their turnovers. They're not the best three-point shooting team, but they're able to put on that, withstand, I guess, that late charge. And it's tough because you feel like right now Texas Tech is an NCAA tournament caliber team. The problem for them is they gave away way too many games early in the conference season. And also, their non-conference, they did not get a single win that you look at in non-con and think, that's a pretty good win. Northwestern State, Texas Southern, Louisiana Tech, not good. They beat Louisville by 32, but that doesn't help you at all. Georgetown by 14 does not help you at all. And there's nothing else on this ledger that's like, okay, that's really good. Then you start the conference slate with 8 straight losses, so then we're not really talking about a situation where you've got many good quality wins. You get on the road on LSU, and they get you wins, fine, whatever, but then you beat Iowa State, K-State, Texas, West Virginia, Oklahoma. They're in a spot now where they almost kind of have to win at KU in here in 2 days on Tuesday night. They almost have to win that game if they want to be in the tournament. If they want any chance. They need to win that game, and they might need to win 1 or 2 more as we go to the NCAA tournament. So, or the Big 12 tournament rather. So it's a difficult spot for them to be in. That late charge, it's just like this league, you cannot fall that far behind the 8 ball. Because while they're still playing good basketball, they just got caught yesterday. They just got caught in a situation where it looked like they had it. They came back, they started on the way back, and then they end up losing that game at the dying embers of it. It's just difficult. It's just difficult because that team feels like a top 25 team right now, but they dug themselves too big of a hole. Oklahoma State, just not good enough shooting the basketball yesterday. I think is my number one observation as they fall to K-State. K-State they got great performances from the star players. Noel has 22, 8 assists, 7 turnovers, but still played really well. Keontae Johnson, 17 points, and Noel 5 for 12, 3 for 8 from 3. That's good enough shooting for me. I've been a little critical of Marquise Noel's 3-point shooting. I think very fair enough for me to be critical of it. They get the job done. Love the way Jerome Tang's team is kind of returning the corner again, if you will. Turn the corner. They were kicking the door down back there in in January, and now they're kind of back to where they were after a big slide. They got win against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's got 7 conference wins, which I think people thought, hey, that might be enough, but it's probably, you can't just rely on a certain number. Context matters, and they're going to need more. They're going to need more quality wins than what they have. Now, if you look at their resume, they've got more quality wins than Carolina has, but Oklahoma State ain't North Carolina, guys. And look, I'm not saying if those two teams met on a neutral floor, Carolina would beat them. I'm just saying this Carolina group made a deep tournament run again, and they've got the NC, they've got the Jordan brand on the pants. It's the same thing with college ball playoff talk, guys. I know they're going to say it doesn't really matter. Blind resume test. Oklahoma State, you can't beat the number of good wins they have, but I'm sorry, it's going to be difficult because, they need to get another 2 wins, I think, in my opinion, for Oklahoma State. And great win for K-State. West Virginia is not going to be hurt that much by their loss against KU. I think it's pretty safe to say that a near loss or a near victory that was a loss doesn't hurt them too much. Problem is they lost 4 of the last 5. Now, they have been, every single game they lost in their last 5, they were dogs in, right? They were a dog at Texas, they lost by 34 points. They were a dog at Baylor, lost by 12. They were a dog at Tech, they lost by 6. Or they're at home against Tech. So that was one game they were favored in. But Tech's been playing their best basketball this season, so it makes it more challenging. And then they beat Oklahoma State at home, which is a nice win by 18. And in this game, they were a 9-point dog. They cover there. This thing was close late. This team is good enough to be in the tournament. It's just, and the metrics love them. They've got a win in the early season at Pitt that helps. Neutral against Florida is okay. UAB's a decent win, but it's at home. And then it's TCU, it's Tech, it's Auburn. The Auburn win is going to help them a lot. Obviously, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. So, they've got these wins that are helping them start to make up a resume. The big thing is they could really use a nice road win because you look at their road schedule, they've won one game in conference in Big 12 conference play on the road. They beat Oklahoma 93-61. No, excuse me, that's not it. They beat, let's see who it was, Texas Tech 76-61. That's a good win, strong win, but it was not as good at the time, when they got it. So I think it's something, obviously, we have to keep track of here. But they're going to inch closer to the bubble. Teams in the bubble are winning. So they're going to find themselves in a spot where they need to get themselves a couple more victories the rest of the way. KU, really impressed with how DeJuan Harris played yesterday. He led the Jayhawks in scoring, which is not something that we've said very often for them. Loved the defense from Jalen Wilson at the end of the game. Thought that was fantastic. Thought he was phenomenal. With the way he just defended on that last possession. And I've made this comment before, but I think great players find ways besides scoring to impact the game. In the Baylor game, it's the way that he just ran and crashed the glass because it almost got everybody else in on the act. Those guys were so good in the offensive glass. And I know it's a risk to do it. I know it is a risk to do that because it could leave you open on the back end, but they were relentless on the offensive glass, and he was last week, and he led that charge last week, and things like that. So he misses the free throw here, but then defends the hell out of, I think it was either Toussaint or Johnson there at the end, and forces a travel, the 21st turnover of the game that KU forced. He did an excellent job in that last possession, and so I know his scoring has fallen off a bit, but to me, he's still making National Player of the Year caliber plays. Will he win it? No. I still think it is one Zach Edey, but he's starting to play like a guy, he's still playing like a guy, that is at that clip. Let's hit on Baylor and Texas. That was the big matchup of the day. Jalen Bridges, to me, that's the swing guy, right? Because George can go cold sometimes. Flagler can go cold. Cryer can go cold. We saw it, but he was making individually strong plays towards the basket yesterday. Spin moves. He's a tough guy. He can grab you rebounds. He is that 4 guy. He plays that swing position really well because we know what Baylor likes to do. Baylor, I think, in the most perfect world, wants Bridges and Chama Chachua crashing the glass. And those 3 guards on the outside attacking, but Bridges can be a guy that can pull it out. And I think it's also Bridges can drive more because JTT doesn't just camp out by the rim. He's always in the perimeter looking to set screens. And Flagler, Cryer, and George are not posting guys up. That's not really they're not the guards to get in the paint. Sean Livingston action, back you down, hit a turnaround. Jay, it's not their game. So there's a lot of space, and I think he's doing a good job of finding that space and driving. And this was a good defensive battle first half, but Baylor then starts hitting more of their shots second half. And Baylor's the ultimate if they're hitting their shots team, which is the laziest college basketball commentary that I think applies less often than college basketball analysts use it. But Baylor is a team that's of just guys who normally create pretty good looks for them. Watch the way Adam Flagler drives. He does such a good job of getting really low on the drive, putting his arm out, but almost using kind of his shoulder because he's so low, and pushing the legs, the stomach, hips, kind of, and maybe even groin area of an opponent. Not cheap shotting, but the way he gets so low, gets into them, and then turns kind of the corner and is able to get his shot off. He's so fantastic at creating space. I think it's really fun to watch him play and watch him cook. And so, obviously, Keontae George out off the bounce. I've mentioned this. I believe him to be the most talented guard out of the last 6 guys, the 6 guards we've mentioned that have played at Baylor in the last few years. Jared Butler, Maceo Teague, obviously Davion Mitchell, who's kind of the NBA, I think the best one in the NBA. And then you go LJ Cryer and Adam Flagler. George is by far the most talented. Now I know that coming in, but he is a professional scorer. He's got a knack for scoring, and he's not always the most efficient, but he's got that knack for scoring. But it's great to see other guys like Bridges develop and come into his own. I don't think they played their best basketball yet. I felt like Flo Thamba was more effective than he was at other times. It's not saying much, I know, but I felt like he was a bit more effective yesterday. And so that was a big win for them. Basically now, guys, the situation is when it comes to the Big 12 championship, it's Kansas's to lose, right? Kansas now has a 1-game lead on the Longhorns. This week, they will take on Texas Tech at home in 2 days, as I'd mentioned. Texas, their last game is at TCU. So Kansas could outright win the Big 12 championship with a win against Tech and a Texas loss at TCU. I mean, it's plenty reasonable enough. But we'll have an idea of what Saturday means. The one thing is for sure, though, at this point in time, we know that even with a Texas win and a KU loss, Kansas is going to have the opportunity to outright win the Big 12 basketball championship next week in Austin. That is going to be available for them next week in Austin. We know that is signed, sealed, delivered. They'll have a chance to do it. If Kansas loses and Texas wins, that game is for the Big 12 championship. If KU loses and Texas loses, that game is going to be for either a share if Texas wins or outright if KU wins. And then if KU wins and Texas wins, a KU win and Texas loss, that means KU wins it. And then also a KU win, a Texas win, that'll be for either a Kansas outright or a Texas shared. So there you go. There's situations that we're heading in. One more game. I'm going to use this game more of just a way to mention the depth of the league. Iowa State loses at Hilton Coliseum to Oklahoma by 11. I mean, this is Oklahoma, just maybe the most confusing team. The worst team to bet on and against. If I ever do against Oklahoma, I'm always teasing the line because they could lose by 40 or they could come out and beat you by 30, apparently. In this game, they shot really well from the 46% against Iowa State's pretty good. 43% from three. That was a big thing. Also, they made their free throws. Despite, guys, they turned the ball over 13 times more than Iowa State did. But Iowa State was 4 for 15 from three. They were 31% from the field, and they were 59% from three. I love you, Iowa State fans, but there's a reason why I've out and out dismissed the chances of you all winning anything significant this season. Because you lack a primary scorer that can go and get me the buckets I need. I know Jaron Holmes might end up being that guy. Maybe in the tournament he's that guy. And he's got let's see, COVID year. He's technically a senior, but he played COVID year. Let's see, 1920. No, so no COVID year for him. He's played 3 since, so he should have one more unless the transfer rules kind of screwed him. I'm not sure if he's got one more or not. But down the line, they got to find somebody else. It should have been Tyrese Hunter, really, to be honest. But obviously he's on Texas now. I don't have anybody that I really just trust to get me baskets late in games. And I know Gabe Kalsher's good, but he's not a guy who's always creating his own shot. And this was an ugly basketball game, but it kind of played out in a way where it's all right, Oklahoma hit some threes. Iowa State hit nothing, thanks to Oklahoma's defense, but also just they hit nothing. And this just shows the depth of the league. Oklahoma at 14 and 15, I know their guard play is not excellent, but give me a Grant Sherfield gets hot. There are 9 teams that I could see in the Big 12 championship game right now next week. I'd be surprised if OU was there, but are we, for a team that beat Alabama, for a team that beat K-State, for a team that won at Hilton Coliseum, that had KU dead to rights, that really could have beaten Texas, they've had opportunities to win big games. They have not done it. So, it just shows you the absolute depth of this league. Guys, Iowa State now, 17 and 11, 500 in the league. I did not think they'd be at this point. That's pretty crazy to me. It feels like they've been a lot better, but that's where they are at this point. All right, folks, I'm sorry about the video quality or, the way the video comes out, no production or anything. Out of breath because this is the second time I've recorded this. I did basically 28, 30 minutes the first time around. About 29 now for this one. So just basically did the hour of the podcast. I had to do it a second time. Make sure you guys subscribe to us on YouTube. And make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at JoshNeighbors_. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.